Hey, this is the video lesson for lesson 2.4, and we are focusing on percents that are greater than 100% and percents that are less than 1%. And I call these the tricky ones. So, what I want you to do is take a second to fill out your graphic organizer. Or your foldable. This is the cover of your foldable. When you open up your foldable, this is the top flap and this is the bottom flap. So really, this one is a little bit of a longer foldable, but make sure you get everything copied down. Especially this where it says make it a decimal first, because that is the key for today. All right, so pause this. Remember, get it copied down in your foldable and then restart so we can start the lesson. Go ahead. All right, so the key thing as we're going all over all of these is we are going to make them a decimal first. So I'm going to get a copy of your foldable that I can use when I go over these examples here. So let's start with example 1. So example 1 says write 0.2% as a decimal and as a fraction in simplest form. The problem is a lot of people see this and they think it's already a decimal, but if there is a percent sign, it is a percent. So remember my key, make it a decimal first. So I'm going to start by writing this out. So I have 0.2%. Now remember, to make a percent a decimal, we use deep. And since it's a percent, we move our decimal twice to the left. So to do this, I'm going to add a 0, and then I'm going to move my decimal twice to the left. It starts here, once, twice, and it's now going to be here in front of the 0. So I'm going to write that down. 0.002. This is the decimal. The other thing the problem asks me to do is to make it a fraction in simplest form. Well, once it's a decimal, we already know how to change decimals to fractions. And if you could always look back in your foldable to find out. It's say it, write it, reduce it. So when I say that decimal, it's 2 thousandths. So I'm going to write 2 thousandths as a fraction. And I'm going to reduce it. And yes, I can reduce it on a calculator, but if I divide them each by 2, it becomes 1/500ths. So as soon as I made it a decimal by using deep, I went from the decimal to get the fraction. It is much, much, much harder if you tried to go from the percent to the fraction, so we don't even go there. All right, let me show you the next example. In example 2, now we have a percent that's greater than 100%. It says write 170% as a mixed number in simplest form and as a decimal. So remember, make it a decimal first. This will be your easiest bet. So since it's a percent, I'm going to use deep again. So let me write it down. It's 170%. And remember, in whole numbers, the decimal, I'll put it in red, is always at the end. When I go twice to the left, it's going to be right between the 1 and the 70. So when I write it as a decimal, it becomes 1.70. Now, by the way, if it's 1.70, you can just erase that 0 at the end. You don't have to, but it's going to make your life easier. So this is our decimal, 1.7. Now, it's a decimal, so say it, write it, reduce it. So when I say this, it is 1 7/10. I'm going to write that, 1 7/10. And remember, when you go to reduce it, just type in the 7/10 part. Don't worry about the 1 whole. And if you do, you'll notice it doesn't reduce, so this is simplest form. All right, so we're going to have you try a couple. So let's go down and look at what you're facing. So you are going to try, we'll be working on A, B, and C. So I want you to try A, B, and C on your own. Remember, whatever one you're doing, change it to a decimal first using deep. Once you get the decimal, then say it, write it, reduce it to get the fraction or mixed number. All right, so try all 3 of these problems, pause it, and when you're done, restart it to see if you were right. If you're really stuck, you can restart the video and do one, maybe A or maybe A and B with me, but it's better for you if you try it first. Go ahead, pause now. All right, so let's see how you did. Are you ready? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this an A. Since it's a percent, I'm going to make it a decimal. Now remember, let me write deep down so it could help us remember. Since this is a percent. We go twice to the left. And I'm going to have to add a 0 there. So let me add a 0 to the left. Move it twice to the left, and it's going to be right there. And my decimal is going to be 0.0025. I'm halfway done just by moving my decimal twice to the left. Now, as far as my fraction, I'm going to say it, write it, reduce it. So when I say that, you say 25 10,000ths. And I'm going to write 25 10,000ths. Now when I reduce it, I do know on the calculator sometimes when you try to reduce a fraction that's out to the 10,000ths or bigger, sometimes it doesn't reduce it and it changes it to a decimal. So let me show you a trick. In case maybe this one did or not, I don't remember, but let me show you a mental math trick. So first off, I'm going to divide both of these by 25. And I know 25 divided by 25 is 1. But check this out. When I divide 10,000 by 25, what I'm really going to do is I'm going to divide 100 by 25, which I know is 4, because there's 4 quarters in a dollar, right? And then these two zeros I just add after there. And that's my fraction in simplest form, 1/400. So that one was tricky. If it didn't reduce on your calculator, all right, that's a little bit trickier. But now let's look at B. So in B, I'm going to start by deeping it. It's a percent twice to the left. It becomes 3.00 or just 3. Now, as a fraction, 3 wholes is just 3 wholes. So really, your answer is just 3. That's it. That's the fraction. That's the decimal, right? It's just 3 wholes. So that one might have tricked you up a little bit too, but it's easier than you thought. And in C, are you ready for 530%? Let's start by moving that decimal twice to the left. It's going to be right there between the 5 and the 3. So I get 5.30, or just 5.3 will be easier, right? That's my decimal. Now my mixed number. Say it, write it, reduce it. 5 3/10 is 5 3/10. If I go to reduce that, it doesn't. It's in simplest form, so that's my answer. All right, how'd you do? Did you do well? I bet you got tricked on B a little bit. And maybe this as well, because if it didn't reduce on your calculator. All right, let's try one more example here, and this is a real-world example. So let me scroll down here. This says, Jimmy's savings increased by 250%. Write 250% as a mixed number in simplest form and as a decimal. Remember, make it a decimal first. So I'm going to start by deeping it. Once, twice. It becomes 2.5. That's my decimal. Now for my mixed numbers, say it, write it, reduce it. 2 5/10, 2 5/10, or it reduces to 2 1/2. Now I bet if you thought of it, you knew 2.5 was 2 1/2 anyway, and you wouldn't have even had to reduce it. All right, that's how you do that one. Let's go down and have you try one. So in D, let's read it here, and then you're going to try it on your own. D says the stock price for a corporation increased by 0.11%. Write 0.11% as a decimal and as a fraction in simplest form. Remember, change it to a decimal first using deep, and then say it, write it, reduce it to get it to be a fraction in simplest form. All right, pause the video, try D on your own. Go. Okay, let's see how you did. So I'm going to write my percent down. So it's 0.11%. And remember, deep says to change a percent to a decimal, you go twice left. So if I add a 0 and go twice left, my decimal becomes 0.0011. That's my decimal. Now for my fraction, I say it, write it, reduce it. So that's 11 10,000ths. I'm going to write it as 11 10,000ths. And it actually doesn't reduce because 10,000 doesn't divide by 11. I don't need a calculator to check that. So that's it. 11 10,000ths is a decimal and a fraction. I hope you got it. All right, so let's go on to the next page. The next page is we're going to be taking mixed numbers and changing them to mixed numbers and decimals and changing them to percents. Now, the good news is the decimals, you just use deep. So we only have to worry about these mixed numbers. So I'm going to get the graphic organizer, the foldable page that we wrote for this. Okay, time for example 4. It says write 1 1/4 as a percent. Now, remember, change it to a decimal first. I know it doesn't say to write it as a decimal, but we're going to take that decimal and then we're going to use that to get the percent. Now, changing it to a decimal is easy because you just divide the numerator by the denominator. So we have 1 1/4. So I'm going to do 1 and point. And remember, for 1/4, you just divide numerator divided by denominator, and you get 1.25. Now that's the decimal. So to make it a percent, remember deep. Remember, deep is easy. That's why I have you do it this way. Move the decimal twice to the right, once twice, X marks the spot. It is going to be 125%. Now, if you're interested, in your book, they show you a couple different ways, so you're welcome to look through the steps here, and they even show you up here a third way that you might have figured that one out. And any way is okay. So I'm just trying to keep it simple by saying make it a decimal first. So let's work on E and F. So let's try something. Let's have you just do E. So remember, make it a decimal first, and the steps are right here in your graphic organizer, and then use deep to make it a percent. So just do E, pause the video, when you're done, play it, see what you got. All right, let's see how you did. So 2 9/10 is 2.9. 9 divided by 10 is 0.9. So you just take that 0.9 after the 2. All right, now to deep it, it's a decimal, so you go twice to the right. So you have to add a 0 first, go twice, and it becomes 290%. All right, so now if you had that one good, we want you to get F. If you didn't, think what you did wrong. And remember, the steps are right here in your foldable. So it tells you what to do. Divide numerator by denominator and then deep. So do those two things. Now I want you to pause the video and do F by yourself. Go. All right, let's see how you did. So first, 3 2/5 is 3 point. And remember, for the decimal, I just do 2 divided by 5, numerator divided by denominator, and that comes up to 0.4. So just put the 0.4 after the 3, and I have my decimal, 3.4. Now I'm going to deep it. Don't forget to add a 0, and it becomes 340%. That's your answer to F. So I hope you got it. All right. Lastly, we're going to go down to examples 5 and 6. And guess what? I don't need that stinking thing there, because these, I don't care what they look like, we are just going to use deep. So let me show you in example 5 and 6. You ready? So let me get deep written down. They are both decimals, so that means I'm going to move my decimal twice to the right. So in 5, I have 1.68. Move it twice to the right, X marks the spot. It's going to be 168%. That's it. Go to 6. I have 0.0075. Move that decimal twice to the right, once, twice, X marks the spot. It's going to be 0.75. Don't forget your percent sign, because I know it looks like a decimal, but we're changing it to a percent. That's it. Just use deep. All right, so here's what I want you to do. For G, H, and I want you to do those three, all three of them by yourself. So I would start by writing deep down so you can see it. And remember, they're all decimals, so you're going to the right twice for all of them. Don't forget your percent sign after your answer. Okay, do those 3 problems, pause the video, restart it when you're done to see if you're right. Go. Okay, let's see how you did. So let's start with 2.5. I'm going to write deep. So I've got to go twice to the right, add my 0, once, twice. You should have 250%. All right. Let's go to H. So don't forget deep. Twice to the right. It's going to be right there. So I have 0.4%. Don't forget your percent sign. And last, I. So, remember deep tells you to go twice to the right. Once twice, going to be right there. So I have 0.16%. Don't forget your percent sign. All right, that's it for those. Last example, example 7, and then we're going to do problem J. So example 7 is just going to be what we just did, but in a real world link. So in 7, example. Number 7 says the cheetah is the fastest land mammal in the world. The peregrine falcon is the fastest bird in the world. Its speed is 2.1 times as fast as the cheetah. Write this number as a percent. So, all I do here, take a look at 2.1. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so they have 2.1. They added a 0. They moved the decimal twice to the right, and they got 210%. So, when you read that, you would say the peregrine falcon speed is 210% of the cheetah speed. All right, so now I want you to do J on your own. Pause the video and restart it when you're done. See if you got it right. Go. Okay, let's see how you did. So J says, the slowest land mammal is the sloth. Its speed is about 0.0016 that of the cheetah. Write this number as a percent. So, since it's a decimal, I'm going to move my decimal twice to the right. Go start here once, twice. It should be right there before the 1. So when I write that down, 0.16%. Did you remember the percent sign? All right, so that's it for today. I know there was a lot in this video, so if you have any questions, make sure you ask. And if you're absent, my guess is you're going to be doing some of these problems down here. Just check your absent sheet. All right, thanks, guys.